Hey everyone, this is Amber Key, and you're listening to a Bright Idea podcast, a show where I sit down with entrepreneurs to discuss the aha moments that launched their businesses. On today's episode, we're joined by founder of Kid Onyx and host of the What's Good With You podcast, Nia King. Kid Onyx was born out of Nia's passion to provide essential tools for the children she serves in the vibrant communities of Los Angeles, Compton, and Inglewood. As a social worker, Nia recognized the needs for resources that truly resonated with the experiences her young clients were facing. Nia created Kings and Queens emotion cards, a revolutionary tool designed to help young Black children identify and manage their emotions. In a time of heightened stress and uncertainty, especially during the pandemic, these cards offer a lifeline for children navigating through challenging emotions. With disruptions in schooling, sleeping schedules, and social interactions, it's more important than ever to equip children with the skills to manage their emotions effectively. The Kings and Queens cards serve as a guiding light, helping children regain stability and confidence as they transition back into their everyday routines. In this episode, Nia and I delve into her journey with controlling her own emotions, how she became interested in mental health counseling, and the transformative impact of social-emotional learning and the invaluable role that Kid Onyx plays in supporting the emotional well-being of children of color. We also get into her podcast, What's Good With You, where she and her co-hosts seek to eliminate stigmas for Black millennials and Generation Z by encouraging healthy emotional regulation. Nia, thank you so much for coming on to a Bright Idea podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm doing okay. I'll say that. I
Okay.
just moved, so I'm moving all over the place. Everything is all over the place, but I'm starting to get back to some normalcy.
I love that. I love how I was like, Nia, how are you? And you're like real honest. Like, girl, I'm okay. You know, when you
Right.
ask people, you're like, I'm good. You're like, no, I could be better. No, I love that. I I'm excited to talk to you today just because I've been excited for weeks to talk to you. It's our first interview on the podcast where we've had a licensed therapist who also works with adolescents. So this is a big deal for a Bright Idea. And I love that, like, first of all, you're like multi hyphenated because you're a licensed therapist, you are a podcast host that we'll talk about in a second or in later on in the interview, and then you also founded Kid Onyx, which we'll talk about in a second too, with emotion cards and helping Black and brown children regulate their emotions, which is absolutely huge. My first question is, how do you balance it all, girl? On top of
You
moving,
know
I'm
what's
like,
funny?
yo, what?
Like, it's funny because sometimes I feel like I'm not doing enough, which is crazy. But yeah, I think the pandemic really was the turning point for me when I first entered the workforce. Like, I was like, I don't think I like this 9 to 5 thing.
Mm,
I don't think that this is a long-term thing for me. And I started the podcast in 2020 because I love podcasts. I would listen to them all the time when I'm studying or driving. And I was just like, why are there no podcasts with Black men and women talking about mental health?
mm.
So that's when I started the podcast. And then shortly after, I was doing Zoom therapy with children, which is very difficult. So I was just like, I gotta figure out a way to engage these kids on Zoom. I don't know what I need to do. Do I need to create something? So that's how Kid Onyx kind of came about because I was trying to find engaging ways to get the kids to talk on Zoom because
Mm.
they didn't want to be on Zoom for an hour talking to some strange lady. They wanted to play outside. They wanted to watch TV. So I had to get creative, and that's kind of what sparked Kid Onyx.
So you said that you started off though in your career during the pandemic. You started off in a 9 to 5, and you were like, "Oh, I'm not sure if this is a long term commitment for me."
Right.
Was your 9 to 5 a therapist?
Yes. So I started off doing community mental health. So that's like free therapy for low income families and children.
Hmm.
So when you work for a county, they give you a lot of clients. Like they'll give one therapist like 30 clients, and they're like, okay, well, you need to do case management, you need to see them, you need to meet a certain level of productivity. Like it was very demanding because it's for the county. So they have to show numbers like, okay, we need money, so we need to show you that our therapists are seeing this many clients.
Hmm.
So it was just very stressful because I felt like I'm not really helping these kids because I have to be on such a tight schedule.
Yeah.
And the kids, they're unpredictable. So you can't always be super strict when it comes to, okay, we only have 30-minute sessions. We only have 45-minute sessions. Then I have to leave. Then I don't see you for a week and I have to drive to all these other places. So it was just, I experienced burnout very early on. And
Yeah.
that's when it was just like, I have to work for myself at some point in time.
No, totally. And did you already mention like how many people were in your caseload? Like how many people were you seeing?
I would say at the most, probably around 25 kids on my caseload.
Dang. And this was
Yeah.
all like during COVID.
Yes, this was during COVID. Now I started like fall of 2019, so I barely got to do in person. I barely
Yeah.
because as soon as I started getting the hang of things, it was like we're shutting down.
Yeah.
So yeah, mostly during COVID, like that's when I had the most clients. Um, but even kind of getting out of COVID, I stayed there and having to drive around to different schools, seeing all these kids at multiple different schools. I'm in Compton, I'm in LA, I'm in Inglewood, I'm in Long Beach. It was just, it was tiring. I was very burnt out from that
Being
job.
being a therapist is not for the weak. And it is not for the weak. I applaud all of my friends and all the people that I know that are in the field. And I know like during the pandemic we saw I mean therapy has always been around, but definitely in COVID we saw a spike in therapy. And so I want to like back up a little bit and talk
Mhm.
about your background. And I love talking to people, especially in this field of like, how did you even get to being a therapist?
I would have to credit some of that to my father. My father's a preacher, but before he was a preacher, he was like a youth pastor, like youth minister. He will always help kids, even in his regular job at the housing authority. He was always mentoring kids and helping kids in the neighborhood. And I think that was kind of my introduction to like mentorship and helping younger people. And I always knew that I was going to work with kids
Mm,
because naturally when I'm at church, I want to teach Sunday school. I want to hold all the babies. I want to, babysit all my baby cousins. It was just a natural thing for me. As far as therapy itself, I didn't know that until my senior year at Hampton.
mm,
But before that, I was like, oh, I want to work with children, but I didn't want to be a teacher. So I was trying to figure out, well, how can I still help them, but not in the academic way, just, everyday life.
mm,
And I found out about this MSW program. And they were like, yeah, if you get a master's in social work and you get licensed, you can do therapy. And I was just like, oh, you don't have to be a psychologist.
mhm,
Like, that, I'm gonna do this. Because at the time, I didn't think that I could accomplish being a psychologist. I didn't think that I could get a doctorate degree. It
mm,
was just a mental thing. But now I want to go back and get
and get your
now I actually
master's
want to
and
go
like,
back and get it. But yeah, it was like my senior year at Hampton, found out about the MSW program, and I was just like, this is it. I think this is gonna be the one. And my grad program, that's the highest I've ever performed in school, was in my grad program. And I know that sounds weird. Like you would think that college would be easier. I mean, grad school was hard, but I felt like this is where I belong. So I really put in a lot of effort into my work
mm,
because I was like, this is what I'm meant to do. So naturally I excelled because I just felt like I found my calling.
mhm. I definitely am familiar with that. I graduated a few years ago with a journalism degree, and grad school was hard as hell. But I was like, but I got straight A's because it was like what I wanted. Like I knew I was
Right.
walking in my purpose and also I was paying for it. So I was like, I'm gonna be I'm gonna be sitting in the front of the class. I'm gonna be raising my hand. I'm reading all the books.
Right.
So I know like growing up, I was like a passing student. I mean, I wasn't like top of my class. I liked school, but I
Mhm.
definitely school was hard for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
How would you describe yourself as like a kid?
You know, I struggle with that because now that I'm a therapist, I don't like to call kids bad,
Mm.
but I will say I was very outspoken. I've always been talkative since my mom said when I was like a baby, I was talking, and the doctor was like, "She said that." It's like, yeah, she can say full sentences. Like I developed a little bit faster as far as like language. And I always used to get in trouble in class for
Mhm.
talking to my friends, making jokes, not paying attention because I'm talking, having a full-blown conversation, just ignoring the teacher.
Yeah.
Like that's the type of kid that I was. I did get in trouble a lot because of that. And also just talking back. I always felt like this is not fair. I need to
Mhm.
stand my ground. I need to stand up for myself. So I went to a Christian school where most of the teachers were white. And I was the only black kid in my class up until fourth grade, I think, third or fourth grade.
Hmm.
So I knew I was different than like all the other kids, but I just felt like the teachers treated me differently because I was the only black girl in the class. So I just felt like I had to talk back. If the teacher
Mhm.
said I was wrong, or if the teacher said, I would have something quick to say right back. And even in seventh grade, I got suspended for talking back to the principal because I was arguing a point. She thought I deserved to get in trouble. I didn't think I deserved it. So I was going back and forth with her. And she thought she thought, oh, this I'm gonna tell this kid this, and they're just gonna say, okay. No, I'm not, because I
Yeah.
think that that's right. And so I ended up getting in trouble. But yeah, that's the kind of kid I was. Like I like to have fun and I like to talk. But sometimes that did get me in trouble because I didn't know when to shut up.
Would you say you were like a bad kid, or did you just like know how to advocate for yourself at a young age and maybe it wasn't
That's why I
accepted?
don't like calling kids bad now
Yeah.
because I think about myself and how I was treated. And I don't think I was intentionally trying to misbehave. Like I don't remember being like, oh yeah, I'm gonna just do this to get on her nerves. I just felt I kind of my reactions were kind of big, if that
Mm.
makes sense. Like
Mm.
something had to happen to me first, but then my reaction would be kind of out of proportion to what happened, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Do you
Uh,
remember like a moment when you were young where you felt something made you feel a certain way, but you couldn't like articulate it? Like, do you have any core memories of that?
um, I think that growing up being the oldest daughter
Oh, talk
is
about
a
it because I'm the
very
oldest daughter. It's a unique
it's a
girl.
unique thing. And like I just felt like I always felt that I was treated differently than my younger sibling. And I never was able to like really pinpoint it or really talk about it because even if I tried to talk about it, my mom would be like, "But we love you, we love you." Like it's like that's not what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But yeah, to answer your question, like I had a hard time like struggling with the attention that my parents would give my younger brother versus me. And I knew he was younger, so he needed that attention because he was a baby and but it still made me feel uncomfortable. But I never really I think me acting out in school is connected to that. Like because when I would get in trouble, then my parents would pay attention.
Mm.
They would
Mhm.
have to talk to me. They would have to spend time with me. They would have to give me lectures if I got in trouble. But if I was good, then all the attention goes to my brother.
Mm. That's
So
interesting. And
yeah.
it's interesting being like because there's like at the I know you're a therapist, so you probably heard like oldest daughter syndrome or like,
Right.
like there's like
Yes.
for
Yes.
me in my family, I'm the oldest of three, but we're all 2 years apart. So I never felt like I wasn't getting any attention. Like, in that way, in terms of, like, having a really younger sibling that, like, your parents had to pay attention to you to them because they were, like, significantly younger, it was more so, like, the expectation of,
Oh, yes.
like like, 1, I felt like a guinea pig. 2, like, I wasn't allowed to do anything, but all of a sudden, Kayla and Emmanuel can get away with murder,
Right.
you know?
I know exactly what you're talking about. Because
Yes.
my brother, he's 4 years younger than me.
Mm.
So when I was like in middle school, he's like starting elementary school, so it was a big gap. Like I babysat him. But if he did something wrong, I got in trouble because it's why weren't you watching your brother? Why weren't you're supposed to be an example? Like it's always been that. So I definitely resonate with that. Yes.
When did you when did you realize the emotions that you were feeling and be able to, like, cope with that?
Honestly, I don't think I ever really coped with it in the right way. Not until I matured myself. Like when I got to like 10th grade, maybe, and I started realizing, oh, I want to go to college, let me act right.
Mhm.
That's kind of it was about my desire to get to a certain place. So that's when I started to kind of like dial it back a bit. And I never got in trouble in high school. But as a child, I mean, it was just church. Every we go to church all the time, but I didn't see church as a coping skill in my eyes. I felt it was a chore.
Mm,
Because
mhm.
when you're like a preacher's kid, it's almost like work. Like you have to go every Sunday. You
Yeah.
have to go to all the second services, third services, Easter, like everything. You have to go to everything. So it felt more like a job. I used to dance when I was younger, like I went to dance school and stuff. That kind of helped. Um and then in high school I ran track. So I feel like that helped me a little bit because I got to kind of create my own identity and like sense of self, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But I still don't think like when I was like a kid, I don't think I was coping with it. Like I think I was just acting out. Like that was my way of coping with it. Like acting out, getting angry, talking back. Yeah, that was my way of coping with it. I didn't
Yeah.
realize, yeah, the impact or why I was acting like that until I became an adult and I started studying, you know,
Yeah.
children's behavior.
What you said that, when you went off to college, so you went to Hampton University,
Yes.
with my sister, Kayla,
Yes.
um, and you said, was it your junior year that you decided that you wanted to be a therapist?
Yeah, like end of my junior year, kind of like beginning of senior year, I think. Yeah.
What about psychology was it that made it you wanted made you want it to be a career?
I think that psychology, I feel like I was always a curious kid. Like I always wanted to know why. Well, why do we have to do this? Why is this rule in place? What is this? How is this going to help me? Like I don't understand. So psychology is the study of the mind. Why do we make the decisions that we make? What are they influenced by? And so learning about that in college, it was just like, wow, it's so complex,
Mm.
like people just think, well, it is what it is. And it's like, no, it's really not. Like there's always a reason. And I think just my curiosity as a child, always talking back, trying to get an answer of why or why do we have to do this and they do that? That's not fair. Like that inquisitive part of me, I think that's what kind of attracted me to psychology. But I don't know why. I like to investigate. When I'm interested in something, I really dial in. Like I really dial in. I used to want to be a detective.
Mm.
Or I wanted to be a therapist because I'm just like, I gotta get to the answer. I
Yeah.
don't know where that came from,
Yeah.
but yeah. And then when I figured out, oh, I could be a therapist for children so that children don't have to go through the same thing I went through, it was just like an aha moment. Like, this is what I'm gonna do.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I think that that's so important when you talk about mental health and just psychology. I mean, we put so much emphasis on our physical fitness and keeping our bodies in check. And really, it starts with the mind. And I
Right.
think that like mental health and mental fitness is just as, or if not more important than, physical fitness, because when your mind isn't right, that's when everything else in the physical starts to deteriorate.
Exactly.
And so
Exactly.
I find it's so fascinating that that is like a career that you decided to go into specifically for children, because it, we're about to get into Kid Onyx in a second with your emotion cards, but when I bought your cards, I had every intention of buying these for a friend who is having a baby, and I ended up she's about to listen to this podcast and be like, "What is happening?" I kept them for myself because I was going through them. I was looking through it and I was like for example, I'm about to pull out one right now, but it was like, I mean, it's so simple. It's like silly, right? And then on the back is like, when you're silly, you can smile, you can dress up, you can dance. And I like, it's so simple, but I was like thinking and I was like, "Oh, I can do those things?" So the fact that a full grown adult, I'm literally
Yeah.
29 years old, and I can't even articulate sometimes how I feel in my head. The
Hmm.
fact that you created something for a child,
Yeah.
these kids that you're helping, like, are going to be light years ahead of how we were because you created this thing. So,
Right.
yeah.
And a part of that too comes from when you think about people and how they behave as adults, a lot of that stems from childhood. Like I meet a lot of, teenagers and adults who are uncomfortable with sharing their emotions.
Mhm.
They're uncomfortable with being vulnerable with their friends or being vulnerable with their partner. That all starts when we're children.
Mhm.
And like, who is teaching us the words to say? Who is teaching us how to deal with these emotions? What are we seeing in the home? And a part of my job as a therapist for children is building that foundation so that they don't have those issues when they become an adult.
Yeah.
But those formative years, that's really important for building those type of skills. That's why I was like, I specifically want these for little kids because this is when they're learning the most. They're sponges. They
Yeah.
repeat everything that their parents say. Whoever is around them, they're gonna repeat it. So you might as well repeat something that's actually beneficial that they can learn from,
Mhm.
instead of something else.
I wanna get back to the kids for a second, but when you were working with the kids, what were some of the biggest concerns that you were seeing in, like, your sessions with them?
In the pandemic or
In the pandemic, or just talking before you created these cards, like, what were some of the big things that you were seeing with them, that like these struggles or issues?
well, the big thing that I was seeing is because a lot of these kids were not used to really spending time with their families. And that sounds sad, but it's just like
Mm.
a lot of times parents, and not all parents, but some parents will just like, okay, go play with your iPad, go over there in the corner. Like they don't really have to deal with their children's emotions, right? So I feel like it was like an influx in everybody, everybody wants their kid to be in therapy because they don't know how to handle their kids' emotions. They're not used to spending time with their kid. They're used to sending their kid to school, coming home, let them be on the iPad, then go to bed. You get what I'm
Mhm.
saying? So with the kids, it was just like they were struggling with emotional regulation, dealing with not being able to see their friends, not being able to go outside, not being able to, do the same activities that they used to do. Like if they were in sports, if they were in swimming or whatever, they can't do none of that. And
Mhm.
you see the effect it had on adults. So just imagine for kids who are used to being outside, playing, interacting with their friends, to being isolated in a house where their parents don't even acknowledge them. So yeah, mostly what I saw is just them dealing with the pandemic itself, being traumatized by that, and then also emotional regulation. Like they don't know what to do. They're having tantrums. They're having long crying spells, and like the parents are like, I don't know how to calm them down. I don't know what to do. So that's the majority of what I saw is just like poor regulation skills when it comes to their emotions.
How are you identifying, or how would you describe emotional regulation for the people that don't know what that is?
So emotional regulation is, let's say, like for example, when you're at work and somebody says something offensive to you, right? Depending on the way that you handle your emotions, that determines how you respond, right? I got some kids at the school that might start fighting, when they get offended, like she was talking shit about me and now I gotta beat her. Whoa, 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 whoa. And then I got some kids that will be like, oh, yeah, I didn't like that, but she not worth it. So I'm gonna walk away because I don't want to miss out on my senior activities. So
Mm.
it's kind of like the way that you cope with that emotion, right? So some kids throw tantrums. Some kids actually can talk about what they're feeling and say, you know what, mom, I don't feel good. I'm feeling mad. I think I'm gonna go take a bath, and that's gonna help me calm down.
Yeah.
That's a good sign of emotional regulation. I hope I explained that right.
No, that you explained that perfectly. And it's interesting too, because as an adult, like I feel like I sometimes have issues with my emotional regulations. You hit the nail on the head when you were like at work and someone pisses you off. I'm like, I'd be ready to swing, but then I'm like, I
Right,
gotta pay bills. So
right,
I'm just like,
exactly, exactly.
how do you work with a kid that's like so hot? Like their heart's about to come out their chest because they're so mad. Like, how do you get them to take that step back and be able to identify, like, okay, if I swing on this kid, I'm going to miss out on my senior activities? Like, how do you bring
Mhm.
them down?
It's a case by case basis, but I'll say when I first started like as a therapist after getting out of grad school, one of my first clients was like he had this anger on him where it was just like him against the world. So a lot of the beginning stages of therapy was me trying to gain his trust first. Does he even trust me with his emotions? Because if he doesn't trust me, like I could teach him all the coping skills in the world, he ain't gonna never listen. So a lot of times you kind of have to not not like dumb it down, but like you gotta make it appealing to them.
Hmm.
So I just started getting to know him. Like I started getting to know him, asking what his interests are and what he likes to do. He's into sports, he's into rap, he's into, he's talking about these different rappers, these local rappers or whatever. He likes to play Uno. We played a lot of Uno before I even got scratched the surface. So it's like
Hmm.
you kind of have to build that rapport first before you can even get to that. And once you build the rapport, the kids will just start talking and they'll start telling you stuff. And then when they start telling you the information and you get your assessment of what's really going on, then you could teach them the certain coping skills. So it
Mhm.
is a case by case basis. It just depends.
Let's face it, starting a business is hard work, and building a website for a business, that's another story. Why not hire some help? 35th Street Builders are not just website builders, they're dreamers. With experience spanning in startups to enterprises, 35th Street Builders will provide you with the mobile app and web development skills to get your business up and running. At 35th Street Builders, they pride themselves on affordability, reliability, and compassion. Ready to take some work off your plate? You can schedule an intro call with 35th Street Builders by going to their website at 3sb.io. That's the number 3, the letter S, the letter B.io.
What would you say is the aha moment that led you to start Kid Onyx?
Oh, one of my line sisters, she painted me a Penny Proud painting, and it used to be right behind me in my room.
Mhm.
And one time I was doing therapy with like a 7-year-old on Zoom. So that was painful. And she kept looking at the painting. She's like, that's Penny Proud. That's Penny Proud. Oh my gosh, I love Penny Proud. And so she really was excited about that cartoon. And I was thinking, First I thought, well, maybe I could find episodes of cartoons that show them dealing with like sadness or jealousy. And so I started bringing up clips of different cartoons that showed that, right? And then I was just like, I want to just make my own. Like, I didn't want to make a cartoon, but I was like, why don't I just make my own type of cards that are kind of like a cartoon? At first, I was going to do like different faces of cartoon characters, but licensing and all that, you can't do that.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm going to just make my own. And I called my line sister that did the painting. I told her the idea. I said, I want to make emotion cards with Black children on it, but I want it to be like a cartoon because that's what's going to grab their attention. And she was like, yeah, I got you. So we worked on it for like a year before I put it out. Yeah, we worked on it for like a year because I started the idea in 2020 and they didn't come out. Well, they didn't come out until 2022, but they were finished in 2021. Like I had held it in my hand in 2021.
I love it. And I really love these cards because of what you just said is like they're for Black and brown children. Like when I'm looking at these cards, I think the reason why I kept them and didn't give them to my friend was because this little girl looks just like me. And so it's easy to identify, it's easy to look at these emotions and see something like jealousy and turn it on the back. And you have these actions that help you regulate your emotions, help you cope with them. And the
Right.
person looks just like you. So you can
Exactly.
identify. Um, I want you to talk to me a little bit for the listeners about Kid Onyx. Like, tell me the tools that you supply and like what everything that you can get out of, Kid Onyx.
So right now, starting off, the first product I put out was the cards. Shortly after that, I put out the emotions poster. For now, I'm focusing on those two because I'm trying to build my brand first before I create more products. But initially, I just wanted to do an introduction to emotions. I didn't even want to say, at first I was going to put therapy cards and I was like, no, I don't even want to put therapy cards because people feel a way about the
Mhm.
word therapy. Like, ain't nothing wrong with my kid. They don't need no therapy card. It's like, no, 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 no. We're just learning about our emotions, just like we learn about our shapes and our colors and, letters. We're going to learn about emotions too.
Mhm.
So I really just wanted to be like an introduction into emotions and emotional regulation. And then the poster is the same thing. I used to work at a preschool when I was in grad school. And every morning they have posters on the wall that they point to. They be like, well, what's the day of the week? And the little boy would have to go and point, oh, it's Monday. Okay, what's the weather like? Oh, it's clouds outside. They had to physically like go up there and point to something. I was like, I need to do that with the emotions too. So
Mhm.
that if a teacher does want to put it in their classroom and that's what they want to go over in the morning, how are you feeling today? Oh, I feel sad. I wanted to create something that they could see like on a daily basis so they don't have to actually take the cards out. So that was kind of the inspiration behind the poster. But um I do have some more products coming out this year. I'm not announcing them yet because they're not all the way ready, but they will be out before the end of this year. And my goal is just to keep creating more and more products with children of color on them, books, activity books, posters, everything.
I really love this because it's for everybody. Like when I was thinking about all of the people that this product could help, you talked about, therapists, schools, library, like the list goes
Right.
on, new
Yeah,
moms. How have you been able to bring your cards into your sessions with the children that you work with? And like
absolutely.
what are some of the interactions and like what's sort of the feedback from the kids?
So my kids were the guinea pig before I even put them out. So I um originally had it as a PDF file on my computer since I was doing Zoom, and I would just scroll through them in my sessions. with my younger clients. And it was so beautiful because like the girl that I was working with at the time, she was white, but I was showing her the cards and she loved them. Like she didn't care that the kids were black at all. She was just like, this is so cute. You made this? This is so cute. Can we do the cards today? And that was just like, wow, okay, I'm onto something. I'm onto something. And then I had another client that liked them too, and they were both girls, and I was just like, I'm onto something. I'm onto something. Um, but as I continue to use them, I think you made a good point. It's like I put an age on there, but I'm just like, any age can really use this because I use it with my middle school kids as a conversation starter too. Okay, let's pull out this emotion. How do you normally deal with being sad? How do you normally deal with being angry? I just use it as a conversation starter. So it really could be used for any age.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I always use them. Not so much now because I'm more high school now. The high school kids are they're too grown for me.
That's so
They're too
interesting.
grown for me, so they're a little, too good for the cards. But eventually I am gonna create more stuff for teens as well.
You made a really good point though, earlier about high schoolers thinking that they're too cool for the emotion cards. Cause funny enough, I was but in the same breath, it's like these cards could really be for anybody. I was talking
Right.
to a grown man, a black man, who I was telling him about this interview that I was having with you. And he was like, "What's the interview about?" And I was telling him about your emotion cards, and he was like, "Wow, like I feel like I could use those because, like,
Yeah.
especially for Black men especially who are, just now going to therapy and just now being like willing to share how they really
Right.
feel. I feel like these cards could really help them. It's funny too that in the example that you mentioned with the white girl who your maybe intention wasn't to necessarily reach her, but you reached her as well. Why do you think you talk about it a little bit on your cards, but why did you create these cards specifically for young Black and brown children?
Um, Before I created Kid Onyx, I was looking for therapy cards with Black people on them. And what I kept finding was a lot of times they just do like smiley faces, they do animals, or they'll have like a, a mixture of different races throughout these cards. And I'm like, why is none just all Black cards? And I couldn't figure it out. I'm like, I'm looking on Amazon, I'm looking everywhere. It's no all Black cards for kids. And I'm like, if we want the next generation to be better than us, like we have to start early. We
Mm-hmm.
have to change the way that we approach emotions. It can't be, oh, only speak when spoken to. Like, I'll stop crying before I give you something to cry about. It's like we got to start with the babies. And so I was just like, well, I'm gonna just make them. I'm gonna just make them. I know my line sister is a great artist. I'm gonna just go to her and we're gonna figure something out. I didn't know it was gonna be cards. I thought it was gonna be a book at first, but then it just ended up being cards. But yeah, I just saw a need for it. There was nothing on Amazon, nothing in the bookstores that just was catered to African American children.
When did you say you these like hit the market? Like what date?
In 2022.
And like how have you marketed the cards so far?
I mean, in order to market, you need money. So, in the beginning, it was pretty easy to get people to buy them. But as time went on, like some of the momentum went away, and now I'm starting to get it back because I'm being more vocal about it, trying to speak out about it a little bit more. But I go in the community. I do pop-up shops. Luckily, I work in the school system, so I talk about them at our meetings or share them with teachers. I give it to the principals of the schools that I work at. I'll be like, just check out these cards. Check
Yeah.
this out. I know a lot of people that work in like LAUSD, So I just try to get the word out really through word of mouth. And so far, the response has been really good. A lot of teachers like it. Um, Parents, I'm trying to get the parents on board, but teachers and therapists, they love the product. They
Yeah.
love it.
What's next for Kid Onyx? Like where do you hope to see it in a few years?
My goal is to get it in schools as far as like not a curriculum, but I feel like every school therapist should have one of those in their office
Mhm.
because if you're working with elementary or middle school students, you're going to get a lot of kids who don't know how to verbalize what they're feeling. So that's really my goal is just to get it in schools. If there's a therapist in that school, I want that therapist to have my cards because every therapist needs different tools to, do treatment. So I just feel like being in Los Angeles, where majority of the students are either Hispanic or African American, this is a tool that's needed. And I'm working towards that. I'm definitely working towards that.
Did you always see yourself as being an entrepreneur?
Absolutely not.
Yeah, because it's so funny because you're a licensed therapist and you're also an entrepreneur, and you don't usually see those two mix unless you're like starting a private practice, which I guess is a part of entrepreneurship as well. But like
Which I actually just started my private practice.
that's incredible. Wait,
Yeah.
when?
Uh,
Congratulations.
like just in February. In
What
February.
owning a private practice, like how's that different than working as a therapist elsewhere? Like what are you able to do now that you have a private practice?
So right now, I am a clinical supervisor at a school, right? So I do therapy with students, I do group therapy with students, and I also have an intern that I'm teaching like how to do therapy.
Mhm.
So at a school, it's like you could only do so much because you're confined to the rules of that school. And also the kids see you every day. Therapists are not used to being like seen every day by the kids. So that's a little bit different because anytime they have any little inconvenience, the principal's like, oh, your student is crying in the hallway. I need you to come. So in real life, in private practice, you don't have that. You only meet with them 1 hour every 2 weeks
Mm.
and you kind of create your schedule. It's more flexible. So eventually, I do want to do private practice full time, but right now, I'm trying to gain more experience, and you have to build up your clientele to get to that point where you can do private practice full time. But basically, yeah, private practice is more. I would say it's more laid back because you create your own schedule and you choose which clients you get to see. Where
Mm.
in school, it's like they give you clients. They're like, oh, this kid has been doing this, we need you to talk to them. This kid has been doing this. We need you to check in with them. So it's not as much freedom of choosing your schedule, choosing your clients, and actually, I feel like with private practice, you get better. Well, I don't want to say you get better service because I feel like I give all my kids good service,
Mhm.
but you're able to focus more on the treatment of that client because you don't have to see them every single day
Yeah.
but between sessions you can really create a plan to help that client versus with schools. I mean, you do get the opportunity to do that, but like my first year in schools I had 20 clients. So
It's a
how
lot.
specialized can their treatment plan really be if I
Mm.
have to see 20 of them every week? You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Versus if I'm private practice and I only have a caseload of 5 or 6 clients, and I only see them every other week, I can really focus on, okay, this person has PTSD, this person has depression. Let me do CBT, let me do EMDR, let me, it's like I could really hone in on what's the issue and how can I treat it.
What is like your biggest reward as a therapist when you are working with a client?
Ah, Man, kids know how to tear at your little heart, man. They really know how to tear at your little heart.
I couldn't
Um,
imagine.
the most rewarding thing, I would say the most impactful thing so far is just like when the kid realizes their worth as a person.
Mm.
Because I see a lot of like not to get dark or anything, but like I see a lot of kids like dealing with suicide and dealing with suicidal thoughts. So they really don't see the value that they bring. Like they don't believe that they deserve to be here. And so when they get to that point finally when they love themselves and they actually see the value in their life,
Mm-hmm.
that's like the most rewarding thing. My one of my clients when I first started and I had her for like a full school year, um, when we did our last session, she started crying and she was just like, "Thank you, Miss King. Like, I don't know how I would have got through this without you. Like, you really helped me. And now I feel so much better." And she just was so thankful and she was crying. And I
Mm.
was just like, wow. Like, I just sometimes I just be like, I'm just doing my job. But to them, I'm really helping them through some of the hardest, most difficult times in their lives.
Yeah.
So to get to that point where she's telling me thank you and she's crying, like she's sad that therapy is ending because she actually was able to heal and able to grow and learn how to cope with, her trauma. That was just like, wow, like I know I'm in the right profession. I know I'm in the right profession. Like I just knew right then and there. I was like, this is what I'm meant to do. And yeah, I don't know if I'll ever step away from therapy fully. I don't
Yeah.
think I ever will because it's just moments like that. It's like how could you, you know?
Yeah. And just hearing your stories and like just what I've learned about you thus far, like I do think that you are walking in your purpose and that you are really changing the lives of so many people. And I think that, earlier when I was preparing for this interview, I was listening to your podcast, What's Good with You. And it's crazy because you're working with people and trying to, help them, walk in their purpose and live their better lives, not just like for kids, but for adults as well. And it's a
Right.
constant. And I just want to give you your flowers because I think that you're doing incredible work. And I wanted to segue into your mental health podcast and talk about that a little bit, if you want to get into it.
Yeah, of course. Of course. I
Yes.
gotta tell the people about What's Good with You. Um, that's like my baby. That's my first baby. Like starting something and seeing it come into fruition like that. I love What's Good with You. I've been able to meet so many people through doing that and just hearing their stories. And honestly, I feel like just in my own mental health journey, What's Good with You has really helped me.
Mm.
It's really helped me. And I also went to therapy too. But What's Good with You really helped me because I see how other people heal. And I'm like, you know what? I'm like, I that too.
Mm.
I feel inspired by the people that I have on the show, but I always like to keep it really laid back. I try not to use too many clinical terms and I try not to be too proper because I want people to understand like I could be your therapist and we
Yeah.
could be a regular conversation. It does not have to be, oh, so how do you feel about that? Or how was your childhood? It doesn't have to be that.
Yeah.
It could be a regular back and forth conversation and we could just talk normal to each other. And that's why I created What's Good with You. And that's even why I named it What's Good with You.
Mm.
Because I hear people say that like when they think their friend is tripping or something's going on, like, yo, what's good with you? Like, you all right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was the goal behind it. It's like I want to check in with my people. Like, really, what's good with y'all? I want to check in with y'all. What are y'all going through? What do you need help with? Like, I could have that person that's been through that same thing right here in this chair, and we could talk about it, how they dealt with it. Um, I've had people who went through significant trauma, or people that are in the limelight dealing with changing careers. And recently I did an episode with football players and dealing with that transition of not having football anymore. So I just try to make it relatable to everybody because I feel like everybody can benefit from therapy.
Yeah.
Everybody doesn't need therapy, but everybody can benefit from therapy.
I really love like what you just said in the variety of people that you have on the show, because I've listened to a few of your episodes, and like you said, you have athletes, you have entrepreneurs, you have comedians even. And
Mhm.
it's funny because I really love the comedian episode in particular, because it's so true how we cover up what we're going through with humor. I mean,
Mhm.
I've been through some shit in my life, and people will be looking at me like, why are you laughing? And I'm like, I'm laughing to keep from crying, though. Like,
Exactly.
what?
Exactly.
Like,
Yeah.
we have to, I have to keep going. But
Mhm.
I really love that that's what makes it so approachable, is that you have all of these people in all of these different professions, and that we all have a story, and we all
Right.
going through something, and we can help each other together. You started What's Good With You podcast during COVID, right? When
Yes.
we were all in isolation.
Yes.
What was the moment that you pulled the trigger and got on that mic?
Um, so I would say the whole summer of 2020, I was just planning. I was like, I know I want to do this podcast. I found a black owned podcast studio. I was just like, I'm gonna do it. But I had to have a plan and a purpose behind it. So I kind of typed up a plan, and then I was looking for a co-host. And I was just like, he gotta know what he's talking about. He gotta be vulnerable. He has to be masculine but vulnerable at the same time. And I had found my friend Tawan. He was the first co-host, and we just kind of hit it off. We had good chemistry, and I was like, okay, let's do this. And the very first episode, was actually supposed to be a test episode.
Mm.
Like it was just supposed to be. That was our first time ever recording that first episode. Like I didn't practice before that. And I can tell now when I look at it, I'm like, oh my gosh. Like now I'm like, this is making me cringe. But yeah, around October or September of 2020 is when we recorded the first episode of What's Good With You. And that first episode, the engineer in the room, like we didn't really know what we was doing. He was just like, just start talking. Like just start talking. Sit down. He's like, just do a little test run. That test run was like 15 minutes. And I was like, we keeping this. We
Mm.
keeping it. Cause it was good. It turned out to be good. So yeah, that was the first episode, and that was September 2020, and now it's 2024, and
I
I'm still doing it.
I have to disagree with you for a second, because you said that your first episode you didn't plan it, and that you look back on the episode and you like cringe. I listened to that episode. Nia, you have a way of like grabbing people, like people listen to you. You have a way of like bringing people in. Like I listened to that first episode when y'all were just introducing yourself and like what the podcast was going to be about. And I
Mhm.
also wanted to bring up the fact that you have a lot of men on your show.
Yes,
And
I
I
do.
love that, because I want to know how you break through that wall. Like these men are vulnerable on your show.
Mhm. You
And like
know,
what is that? What are you doing? Spill the
it's
tea.
magic.
Spill the tea.
I really, I don't know. I think part of my interviewing skills, I guess I am kind of like cheating because I kind of use some of my therapist like questions in the interview, and I kind of guide the interview in that way. So if I'm talking to somebody who's went through something specific, or like one of the first guests I had, it was like boys don't cry. Like I started talking about childhood and their relationships with their friends, because I know those are things that influence why a boy would not cry. So
Mm.
I guess I use some of my therapy skills a little bit. And then I just feel like I'm very welcoming and warm, so people just start telling me stuff. This is stuff that this happened before I was even a therapist. Like people always felt comfortable
Yeah.
sharing their not secrets with me, but just being vulnerable with me. I think it's just because I'm very welcoming and I'm always trying to support my friends and support people around me. So I guess they feel comfortable and they just start talking.
No, you
It's never
definitely.
planned. Sometimes things come out and I'm just like, wow, I didn't think he was gonna say that.
Yeah.
But he did. Yeah.
You know, I really loved your episode that you did at the very beginning of the year, the patterns episode.
Mm,
That one really sat with me because I really identified with when you were talking about your grandmother and wanting to and like trying to be you're not being patient and not be and wanting everything to happen at one time, and you get
mm,
so focused on those things that you forget the other things in life.
right.
And I think the reason that that one sat with me is because I was the same. That's how I lost my grandma too, was
Mm,
like,
mm. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I get it. I totally understand what you're saying because as young people, especially like being college grads, we want to be go-getters. We want to
yep,
accomplish everything.
yeah,
But it does come with a price. It does come with a price. We are away from our families while we're pursuing these dreams. But I'll say this, the thing about, my grandma passing, what always resonated with me is that she was very proud of me. She was very proud of me. Before she got sick with cancer, I went to her retirement party. She worked at this hospital for 40 years.
yeah,
40 years. And we were celebrating her, and her boss comes in and she's like, this is my granddaughter. She has her own business. It's Kid Onyx. Like, she makes this. Like, she was like, give her your card. Give her your card. And she always used to be so proud of me. She always pushed education and
yeah,
like being able to take care of yourself. And so, yeah, it was difficult, that I feel like that's why last year I wasn't as, involved in my business because of, her passing. But what gives me comfort now is I know that when she left this earth, she was proud of me. And I
mhm,
proved everything that I needed to prove to her, and I did it.
yeah,
And knowing that's what helps me get through, some of those difficult times. Like, she knew that I loved her and she knew that I worked hard and she was proud. She saw me graduate high school, she saw me graduate college and grad school. So she knew like what she instilled in me actually came into fruition. So yeah, it was definitely a very difficult time, and it is, something that I do regret at times, but it's like it's nothing I could really do now, but
yeah,
just reflect on the positive things that she said to me when she was here.
yeah,
And that's how I get through. That's honestly how I get through. But I still have my moments too, just like that. Just like that. I still have my moments because I miss her, but and it's kind of cliche to say, but I always tell the kids that I work with when somebody passes away, I'm like, a part of them is in you. That's your family. That's your blood.
yep,
That's still running through your veins. Like, so part of them will never pass away because you're carrying that. And I feel like I'm doing that for my grandmother. Her biggest thing, because she didn't get to go to college, she wanted all her grandkids to go to college. And she got to see that all of her grandkids graduated college before she passed. So it's just like, I know that I'm making her proud, and I know that I'm keeping her legacy going by
yeah.
doing what I'm doing.
In talking about patterns, like you just went through all of that, like, we could sit here and beat ourselves up about not
Right,
spending time or not having
right,
enough time or being so bogged down in focusing on our careers and our drive and everything. But when you put it into the perspective of like she is proud and I'm doing all of these things now and living in her legacy, like
right,
that is changing the pattern. So I
right.
thought that that episode was very special especially, what your co-host shared in his life too, and like how he's been able to change his life around. I wonder too, as an entrepreneur and with all of the things that you have constantly going on, how do you constantly work on changing those patterns and becoming the person that you really want to be?
Well, I will credit some of that to the therapist that I was seeing at the time. And you get to a point sometimes where you're just like, dang, I'm tired of feeling like this.
Yeah.
I'm tired of feeling like this. Like I always feel sad or abandoned or, like I got the short end of the stick or like I'm the one that's always giving and not receiving. And when you get to kind of like your breaking point, it's like my therapist just put it into perspective for me. Just if you're tired, it's almost like you have to make changes so that you don't keep repeating the cycle.
Yeah.
It's like saying that, oh, I want to lose weight, I want to lose weight, I want to lose weight, but you don't step foot in the gym. You get what I'm saying? Like you have to change your diet. You have to change the way that how much you exercise in order to reach that goal. So I just, my therapist brought some things to the forefront and about certain patterns that I had. And now that I'm aware of them, I could be more conscious about my decision making instead of just doing the first thing, you know,
Yeah.
uh, because I can. Oh, well, I could go on this date. I could go on this date. I could go on this date. Oh, because I'm pretty. But it's just
Yeah.
like, but should you be? If every time it ends up like this, maybe you should take a break. Maybe you should take your time so you
Yeah.
don't end up in the same place. And so I think when it comes to the patterns, it's like first becoming aware of the patterns. Because if you're not aware, if you think that this is just who I am, this is just normal. Okay, it might be just who you are, but if you're not happy with the outcome, then maybe there's some things you could do.
Yeah.
And so reading has really been like one of the big things that's been helping me. I know it's like weird to say, but it's like I like self-help books. So I've been reading a lot on like anxious attachment and attachment styles and different things because I was going through like a breakup, and that really helped me. And it's just like, oh, I do that. I am always waiting for a text. Like, that those are the kind of things that help you, break those patterns. It's just learning about other people who have went through the same thing. How did they get through it? Or going to therapy, doing the work, and really being honest with your therapist. Because a lot of people be like, oh, therapy didn't work for me. But you didn't tell your therapist the truth either. You didn't tell
Yeah.
your therapist the truth. So it's just a combination of therapy, my podcast
Yeah.
and reading that has helped me kind of hone in on the patterns that I need to change. I would say that's what worked for me.
That's incredible. This has been such a great conversation, and I'm so happy that you came onto the show. I mean, I have learned so much from you in just the short time that we've been able to talk to each other, but even, just talking about therapy, but I talked to you a few weeks ago and you were helping me out with the podcast. You were giving me so many good tips about how to start my own starting my own podcast and just like growing as an entrepreneur. And I just think that you have so much to give to the world. And it's so rare to find that in people because I feel like everybody has their own story, but everybody
Mhm.
doesn't always have the best intentions. And like you're just like so pure hearted. And I've just really liked speaking with you. So I really
Thank
like that you've been on this
you.
show. Yeah, no,
Wow.
this has been really cool. So
That
thanks.
really that really means a lot because sometimes you feel like, oh, I'm not doing enough or nobody's really paying attention. But yeah, there are people are actually paying attention. Sometimes I
Mm,
should be putting the podcast on. I'm like, nobody gonna listen to this, but let's just put it out anyway.
yeah.
But people actually listen. So yeah, I deal with like imposter syndrome sometimes because I'm just like, well, I'm just regular, I'm just a regular girl. But sometimes like hearing stuff like that, it just really it just affirms that I'm doing the right thing. that I'm in the right field. So thank you for that. And I definitely enjoyed this conversation.
Before I let you go, I want to play a rapid fire game with you.
Okay.
Let's have some fun.
Ooh.
It's funny because you had just mentioned you started reading. Reading's helped you a lot, and you talked about attachment styles. I want to know, like, what are some books that you think have really changed you in recent years that you would like to
Okay.
recommend to our listeners?
The Four Agreements. I think Don Miguel Ruiz is the author.
Mm.
Healing Anxious Attachment.
Oh, I need that one.
All About Love by Bell Hooks. Worthy. Jada Pinkett's book, Worthy. That book is really, really good.
Okay.
Really, really good. Oh man, I'm trying to think. That's all I can think of without like actually looking on my phone.
No, you listed 4. Those were 4 great ones, and I'm going to put them in the description so people can go find them. So thanks for that. What has been the most rewarding moment in your career thus far?
The most rewarding moment in my career? Ah, I can't pinpoint it to one moment, but my first year at my new job, I won Student Support Service Person of the Year. So
I
that
mean,
was
duh.
yeah, like my first year. I like
Yeah.
y'all don't even know me for real, you know. So that was like, okay, my first year, I'm getting an award for being out of all these schools,
Yeah.
like 20 schools that's a part of this charter. I'm getting this award. That was like, okay. That was rewarding. Um, what else? I mean, I already told you about how kids will thank me at the end of their treatment. That's always rewarding. And I met Stedman Graham last year, and I gave him the cards, and he was like, "Wow, you made this?" I said, "Yeah."
Wait, you met Stedman Graham?
Yes, I
Tell me
interviewed
about that.
Stedman Graham.
Yeah. So on the podcast?
No, not on the podcast. I hosted a red carpet. And he was the guest of honor. He was the guest speaker for a scholarship gala that I did in November of last year. So I got to interview him. But before interviewing him, I got to meet him, and I gave him like this gift basket with all Kid Onyx stuff and a shirt and 2 cards and 2 posters. Like I kind of made it pretty, and I gave it to him.
Yeah.
Actually, he was a social worker, so we kind of bonded over that. And his book that he wrote called Identity Leadership, he talked about emotional intelligence. So I just kind of, I did my research, and
Yeah.
I listened to his book on Audible, and then we connected with the mental health thing, and I gave him the cards, and he was like, "Wow, this is amazing!" Like, wow. And he met my mom, and my mom's like, "My daughter's the one that interviewed you." He was like, "She was amazing." And I was just, that was just like a really rewarding thing, because like Stedman,
Yeah.
if Stedman is impressed, like it's something here.
Yeah. And for the listeners who may not, I mean, everybody knows Stedman as Oprah Winfrey's partner, longtime
Yes,
partner.
Oprah Winfrey's longtime partner. Yes.
Longtime partner. And so, but I did not know that he was also a social worker.
Yeah, when he first started out, he was a social worker before he became a businessman.
Okay. No, that's incredible. That's like definitely a rewarding part of your career. I love that.
Definitely.
What's the best advice you've ever received?
Ooh, the best advice. Mm, that's so hard.
I know.
I would say more recently, what's been resonating with me is like kind of trust God's timing. Trust God's timing. Um, Everything is gonna work out the way it's supposed to work out.
Mm.
It's like if we try to force things to go our way all the time, it's only going to make us more anxious. So in order to help myself, like with my anxiety, that's what I say. I'll just be like, trust God's timing. Trust God's timing. You know? I would say that's like the biggest advice I could give to anybody, because when you're just getting out of college and you're trying to figure out your career, you just want things to pop. You just want to be successful right away. You want to have the nice apartment, you want to have the best job, you want to, you want to have the partner, you want to have the family, and it's just like it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen the way that you think it's going to happen. But when those things do start to happen, you realize, oh, this is why it's happening now and not back then. I wasn't ready then.
Yeah.
But I'm ready now. So that's why these things are happening now. So yeah, just trust God's timing.
What's the worst piece of advice you've ever received?
Worst piece.
And did you know that it was bad advice
Worst
at
piece
first?
of advice? Therapies for white people.
Who told you that?
Just like friends or like family members. Like, yeah. Therapy wasn't something that I grew up around or even knew about. It was just like that's the white people thing. Like, you don't need therapy. Like, just go pray about it. Like, you're fine. So, yeah, I would say that.
I feel like
advice, but
yeah, no, but I feel like that was really common growing up. It was like certain things were for white people. And that's actually like one, I hate that term so much, because I feel like I'm of the like mindset of like, it's for Black people because I'm doing it. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
it's for everybody.
Yeah.
It's for everybody. Yeah. Yeah.
That's
it's
interesting.
For everybody.
Yeah. If you could invent a new therapy technique, what would it be? I'm giving you some pressing questions.
I know, right? I don't know if it's, I feel like they might already do this, but I am like really into like film and music. And if I could like somehow integrate that as like a type of therapy,
Ooh.
I would do that. Like if we could rap about our feelings, if we could, like kind of like how on Insecure when Issa used to rap in the mirror about how he felt and stuff like that.
Yeah.
If we could really like turn it into a treatment plan of, rapping or making a film about whatever it is that we're going on in our lives, I would definitely try to integrate those, that type of therapy, like movie therapy, rap therapy.
No. Yeah, because there's already music therapy and art therapy. Let's throw some rap into it. Rap is therapy. Like, I feel like it is. No, that's deep. This wasn't on my list, but I'm just curious. Like when you are at your lowest or like you're feeling anxious, like what's an activity or a hobby that you have, or like maybe just an outlet that like gets you back to center?
More recently working out, but working out first thing in the morning. Like getting up at like 4 or 5, working out.
Okay, well, I didn't. It's like,
you don't have to get up. You don't have to get up.
I was like, I'm with her. Yeah, I know you said 4. I said, huh?
No.
No, that's cool.
Working out first thing in the morning, it helps. It almost like sets the tone for the day. Like I'm less anxious throughout the day because I've gotten all that stress and that energy out in the morning. So I'm able to have more energy and just be more calm. That really helps me with my anxiety. Also, listening to music, turn on whoever it is that resonates with you. Mine's Mary J. Blige. Mary J. Blige got me. Before I started therapy, Mary J. Blige was my therapist. Before I knew about therapy, Mary J. Blige.
Yes,
and I listen to ocean sounds or rain sounds.
That helps me go to sleep, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love
That
ocean
always
sounds.
helps calm me down. Put on
Yeah,
my incense or the oil diffuser from the rain sounds and just like sit there or just look up. I'm good. I'm able
I
to
love
put
that.
it back.
I love that. Nia, this was great. I appreciate you for coming on the show today. How can people find you?
So people can find me on Instagram, Nia Queen. And my podcast is _what's good with you. And Kid Onyx is _ Kid Onyx.
And people can buy the cards on Kid Onyx, right?
Right. And you could buy the cards on kidonyx.com.
Love that. Nia, thanks so much for showing up.
Nationwide.
Nationwide. Yes. We're going to get people to buy these cards. Thank you, Nia, for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. I enjoyed myself.
Thank you, Nia. That's it for this week's episode of A Bright Idea Podcast. Today's guest was Nia King, founder of Kid Onyx and host of the podcast, What's Good With You. You can purchase her emotional regulation cards by going to her website at kidonyx.com. You can listen to her podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and on YouTube. If you loved today's episode, then don't forget to like and subscribe to my podcast and leave a review. Shout out to my producers Kayla and Chris for the edits every week. If you have a bright idea or a topic you think I should cover on the show, hit me up on social media or email me at amber@abrightidea.show. Until next time, I'm Amber Key.